Hi folks, this is Ben Franklin, aka the Chess Bear. Thanks for visiting. Today we are going to look at a full chess game against the computer. This is a great way of learning, as Robin will explain what he is thinking about before he moves. I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So here we are on the homepage of solitaire-club.com. And if I click on the menu on the top bar, chess against the computer, and picture of Ben there. And if we scroll down, there's this play button here, which we can click on. And there's a few options given. What I would strongly recommend is that you click on this button in the top left, and it expands the playing area to your screen and makes it much easier to see. Okay, so now we've given the option of either playing somebody else, playing this game with somebody else. That would be local to yourself, so you can't play someone, you know, several miles away. It needs to be someone in the same room with you. Or the alternative is you can play the computer, which is what we're going to do today. Now, at the bottom of the screen are the difficulty levels, and today we'll play the highest level, and we'll click on this, pull forward this pawn in front of the king 2 spaces, and I can do that on the first go. So let's do that. So you'll see it gives me the option of pushing the pawn forward 1 or 2 spaces. Well, I'll click on 2. Now, why have I chosen that particular pawn? Well, again, it is to control the center of the board. It also allows my queen out from behind this wall of pawns. So my queen can now, you see, go on this diagonal, and also this bishop here can also come out through this gap in the pawn wall, and I can put it anywhere on this run here. Well, let's just move out another pawn just to sort of solidify the center. And again, because it's a new pawn, I can move it 1 or 2 spaces. So let's move it 2 spaces. Now, you always need to be aware of what black are doing, and you can see that black has moved their bishop, and this is called fianchetto. It's where the bishop is inside this triangle of pawns, and he is now threatening to take this pawn over here. So I need to be aware of that. At the moment, this pawn here is not protected. This pawn is protected by the queen, but this one isn't. So I can protect this pawn in one of 2 ways. I can either bring up a pawn here, or I could move this knight here to this space. And I think I'll do that because a knight in this position will protect this pawn. So let's do that. It's always a good idea in the early stages of a game they call it developing your pieces. So to bring out your knights and your bishops. So for the moment, I'll just move my knight out here. Okay, and black has moved their pawn up 1. Okay, so at the moment, black is not very well developed. You'll see that both the knights are still on the back line. One of the bishops is also, whereas I have got both my knights out on the field, which is a good place to be. Now, at the moment, I can't take this pawn because it's protected by his rook. But I can consider some sort of an attack. And a good place to look for an attack is the weak pawn, and that's this one here, immediately next to the black king. So what I could do, I could look at moving my knight forward, so threatening this pawn here, and a knight on its own isn't really enough to form a proper attack, so you really need to bring my bishop out as well. So I think I'll do that. I'll move this bishop out here. Okay, now black has chosen to move his bishop out here. I'm not sure why he's doing that. He might be moving down here, but it's not really. I don't think this is. If he moves here, I can move a pawn forward or something like that. So I'm not too concerned. What he might do also, he might move a pawn forward one spot. I mean, it's well protected, and I would have to just move my bishop somewhere else. But that could be what he's planning to do. But let's go ahead with our plan, and let's move this knight here, so threatening this pawn over here. I'm just actually looking at this, and I've also got the option of possibly going here and at the same time threatening his bishop. Now, is that a good idea? Well, let's try it. Okay, so he's chosen to move his pawn 2 spaces forward. So, and it is protected by 2 pieces. So I have 1, 2, 3 pieces that are targeting this pawn. So if we just run through what is likely to happen here, if I were to take this pawn with my pawn, and it would then be threatening his bishop, if he were to take me, well, I could take him with either. I would probably use the bishop, because the bishop would then threaten his rook in the corner. If he were to take me with his queen, I could then take him with the knight. So it's not too bad a position to be in, I think. And I can't see any other things to worry about. The other thing I'm aware of is that I've not protected the king at the moment, so I do need to do that pretty soon. But because there's an immediate threat here, I have to deal with that first. So let's take this black pawn with my piece and see what he does. Okay, so he's chosen to do that. Now I think I'm pretty safe in taking this knight, this bishop, sorry, because I don't think he'll take me with his queen, because he will lose his queen. But let's see what he does. Now, I could, at this point, with my bishop, I could take this rook. that would be fine. This knight is protected by this pawn. This pawn is protected by my queen, so I think I'm pretty safe. I mean, what he might do, he might block me in some way. He might, I don't know, move the pawn forward. But I think as the rook is a higher value piece, I don't think it's too bad an opportunity. So let's go ahead and take that. Okay, so what he's doing now, he's moved his queen in front of my king. So that there is definitely a threat there, which I have to be wary of. You see, what I think is coming next, I think he'll move out a pawn to threaten this knight. And at the moment, this knight is pinned to that position. I can't move it because I will put myself into check. So reviewing the situation, I think what I'll do is I will protect my king. And this is known as castling. And it's where we exchange the position of the king with the rook. And I'll show you how it works. So we click on this second space here, and you'll see that the okay. So what I'll do now, because this pawn is becoming a bit irritating, I'll just stop it in its tracks by just moving this pawn up one. Okay, and he's not being very adventurous here, so just moving this pawn up isn't really anything to be too concerned about, I don't think. So what I'll do now is well, I could either move this rook across into this file here, which gives me some interesting opportunities about possibly capturing his queen. Let's try moving this rook across to this position here. Let's see how he responds to that. Okay, so he's now developed, the computer has now developed the knight. So what I can do now is I can now move my knight away, and that will immediately create a problem for the black queen. So this is an opportunity. If I could in some way put the black king into check, or you see what I could do maybe is I could move this knight over to this position, for example, and it would then threaten the rook in the corner. Now, of course, black could take me with his pawn, but even if he does that, I can then take the black queen, and that to me is more valuable than losing a knight and a rook. Now, of course, in value terms, the rook is supposedly worth 5 points, the knight is worth 3, and the queen supposedly is worth 9. So there doesn't seem to be a net very much profit to be made. But I think a queen is actually worth more than the sum of those two pieces. It's not a brilliant move, but I think it's good enough. Okay, so okay, so I think having a queen on the table is I think more important than the net loss. So I think that was worth doing. So what I'm thinking about is, well, if I move my my bishop here, for example, and that is targeting the bottom of this pawn run here, so that's interesting and threatening his knight. And but I'm aware that he could push up his pawn there, but even if he does that, I could just take him. So I think that's probably a good thing to do. Okay, now he's moved his knight to this position here. Now, this knight is now protecting this pawn. So I can no longer go ahead with my brilliant plan. But what I can do is I can move this bishop to this position, and it would then threaten the king. And it's generally a good idea to put some pressure on the king, because it means that I'm in control. I'm forcing black to take some sort of defensive action. So let's try that. I think it's safe to do it. You've always got to think, well, what will he do if I move there? He's got some these tricksy knights here that can be troublesome. I mean, he could move it here, but he needs to get out of check. That's the first thing. So let's see what he does. Okay, so he's chosen to put his knight in between the bishop and the king, which is all very well, but it does sort of lock in the knight at that position. So let's see what else we can do. Now, of course, I could just take it, take the knight, but then he would just take me back with his king. Now, I could also bring out, what I could do possibly, I think this might be a good idea, is to bring out my queen down to this position here. Now, why am I looking at this? Well, because this knight can't move, what I can do, and really, where can the knight go? It can't go anywhere. So by moving here, I'm blocking the king from moving here. I'm threatening this pawn in this position, and possibly putting the black king into check. So there's lots of threats here, which is what I like. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead, not taking this pawn, but just moving it over here. Okay, so what he's doing now, he's moved his knight back here, so protecting his knight. So even if I take it, he'll just take it back, and then, my threat then has gone. Let's try that. Okay, so he's now threatening me with his pawn over here. So I can either just go ahead with this plan, and why don't I do it? So we'll take this over here. I can't take the rook because it's protected by the pawn. The pawn is protected by the bishop. Now the bishop is protected by this pawn, so if so I could just simply move it out of the way, and maybe that's the simplest thing to do. Okay, so I've got to think about what black is likely to do if I move my queen to this position, for example. He may just move his rook over here because it would be protected by his pawn. So I don't really want to have to deal with that. So I could move it here, and I think I'll probably do that. So let's move it back here. I think that's pretty safe. Okay, so now black has taken the bishop, which I thought he might do, but of course the situation has changed slightly in that there is now this this rook. But let's go ahead anyway. So we'll now take this knight with the pawn. And so he's now taken the pawn and is threatening the bishop. The bishop is stopping the king from moving there. What I could try is moving the queen to this light square here, and that will then put the king into check. Now, the only way he can get out of that is by moving his, well, the two things he can do. He can move his pawn forward one, and that will stop the threat. But I can't take the pawn because it's protected by the rook. So, and I would be threatened by the same pawn. So I don't think I'll go down that road at this point. So, we're still in a very strong position. So I'll just withdraw for the moment. Okay, so what I can do now is move this rook into this position, so threatening this same knight, because the knight is now only protected by the king, and that's not enough. So let's do that. Let's move our rook over here. Now what black has done is they've moved their pawn forward one, so blocking the queen's sight of the knight. Now, what can I do about that? I can simply move my queen over to this file, and on my next go, because at the moment the knight is pinned to that position. It can't move out of the way because it will put black into check. So there's two things black can do if I move my queen here. One, it could move the castle, the rook over here, and it can do that because it's protected by this bishop. So that's a bit annoying. One other interesting thing I've just noticed is that because this knight is pinned to this position, it's no longer protecting this bishop. So I can target this bishop. This bishop is now unprotected. Also, this rook is unprotected, and I can actually threaten both pieces by moving my queen here. So why don't I do that? Okay, so he's moved his bishop out of the way. I can still target his rook, and that might be sensible to do that. Because I've still got this bishop in place, so I can move my queen pretty close. So it's in quite a good position. And the only thing that this bishop is doing is it's threatening this knight, which is not really it's not really a problem. So let's take this rook. Another move I could make, because this rook is focused on this knight, black knight, I could simply take the knight, and I think that would be a good move to make because it eliminates one of the defenders and it puts black into check. So let's do that. Okay, now I still need to be mindful of this bishop, so I need to keep clear of this line. The other thing I could do here is to move my rook over, so threatening this pawn. One thing I need to be aware of is that this line of sight here, if I now move this knight out of the way, obviously this bishop could take my rook, which is not desirable. Okay, so this pawn now is creating some problems here, so I'll just take it, I think, because I don't want to have to worry about stuff around here. So let's do that. Okay, and let's take out this piece here. Now I'll just allow this pawn to get so far, and now we can work out we need to think about how to checkmate black's king. So a good start is to move the queen here. Or I could even just move the queen here. I think that would probably be the best place. So let's try that. The queen is protected by the pawn. Now, this is an interesting situation because normally the king could escape to this square here. So I'm thinking of moving my queen to this position, so protected by my pawn, and the king can't go anywhere. So I think it will be checkmate. So let's try that. And there it is. That's checkmate. So it took a little bit longer than I would have liked, but got there in the end. Well, I hope that was of use. I think watching a game is you learn a lot more than actually being told how to play. Anyway, back to Ben.
Thanks, Robin. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. You can, of course, play against the computer at solitaire-club.com. I'll put a link in the text below the video. If you enjoyed this, please can you click the thumbs up and subscribe to see further material. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.